Sometimes you read a book and it explains everything. All of the things you've questioned, anything that's ever gone wrong in the world, all of it. Jesus and John Wayne is one of those books. Hi, I'm Makensi Grant, and I'm an author working on my debut novel. In the meantime, I'm reading a ton of books, that way I can be grossly overeducated. So when I started reading Jesus and John Wayne, I picked this book up because I have so many questions about Christian nationalism. I'm also a former journalist and have spent years watching live streams of the worst things that you can imagine. All of them. And every single time, once I get past the initial horrific grief, I always come back to the same exact question. Why is it always coming back to Christian nationalism? And why do so many Christians feel okay doing this level of harm? What is the problem? Jesus and John Wayne tries to answer that question for you, but if you're like me, you're really not going to like what it has to say about the state of America. So this January, I started a 2026 reading challenge and was kind of hoping to do a little series where I got to babble about some fun fantasy reads, some new mysteries, try out some stuff that some people have been talking about that I haven't really had the time to look into yet. However, the only thing I've been able to focus on has been the aftermath of the Border Patrol shootings in Minneapolis and this overarching desire to understand how the hell did we get here? And why does anyone want to be a tool of the oppressor? Kristen Nationalism, in her book Jesus and John Wayne, rips away any of those pretenses about Christian nationalism, the state of America, and really how we got here. It's devastating to read, but it's so informative. And I think it's really important to understand we're not just dealing with people who woke up one day and decided to be evil. We're dealing with people who have been ingrained with this since birth. This book lays out how Christian culture has been using every facet of the American way of life to drive the men in it into this really rigid form of masculinity that, well, let's just be real, toxic. You know the image. Picture perfect family, pristine little tow-headed kids, everyone lined up in their matching Christmas PJs, and AR-15s around the tree. Never mind the domestic violence, the overarching amount of abuse, and the fact that these kids are not happy. But who cares about them? Because in every Christian home, every Christian man is a little king of his little fiefdom. And what he says goes. We all know kings can treat their subjects just any way that they want. And that's exactly what Christian nationalism has been driving these men towards. Because at its core, American Christianity is only about building a system that works for them. And when I say them, I mean white Christian men. DeMiz starts the book with the rise of the televangelist and takes you through every single moment up to Donald Trump's first election. Along the way, exploring what made a godly man in each iteration. What surprised me is just how far that definition of what makes a good man got away from what every kindergarten teacher tells their students makes a good person. I mean, seriously, their version of masculinity barely resembles a B-list cardboard cutout character of all of those action movies they love. After all, the Jesus Warrior was built right off the silver screens. Have you heard about their love of Rambo? But no, seriously, they love Rambo. In fact, President Ronald Reagan quoted Rambo in one of his speeches. In fact, he quoted multiple movies throughout his entire presidency as he was pushing for different pieces of legislation coming through, all the while believing that the end times were near. Even the GOP's favorite president is playing a character based off of John Wayne. No, I'm not kidding.
What do you want?
John Wayne's rugged cowboy image mixed with Rambo is where this all stems from. A fake cowboy and a group of men who can't take no for any reason. Does that remind you of any current presidents? Because I could name a couple. Besides the obvious comparisons to President Donald Trump, I see this in so many men that I interact with living in the South. I see this in my own grandfather. I grew up under this constant growing Christian nationalism, where I was told that having boobs was the only thing that mattered about me, but I was also a sinful whore for even growing them in the first place. I didn't know that I was being trained to be some weak-willed man's wife. But I felt the degradation all the same. I saw with my own eyes men be on fire for God on Sunday, and that Monday get caught cheating on his wife. Was he ever reprimanded? No. In fact, the pastor backed him and told his wife she wasn't performing her duties. There were church deacons that their eyes lingered too long on my legs. Their hands roved too low on my back. And it was me who was the problem for wearing a baby tee. In these circles, no one protects the little girls. And as one, you learn that very early. To be a young girl in these environments is to be a lamb raised for slaughter. It's to intimately know fear because it sits at your dining room table. My grandfather was a strict man, a traditional working man that paid for it all. My grandma stayed home, and they claimed that they're still desperately in love. Is it true? Or can my grandma just not live without him now? I'll never know the answer to that. But I do know that his old school views stopped him from being able to see me as a full person. I became a woman, and women do not lead. They submit. No matter how smart they are, how promising they are, or their prospects. Their role is beneath. But even if they aren't fully traditional like my grandfather was, this stuff still permeates in how they exist. My stepfather, now he was childish and angry, an easy target for the late 2000s remilitarization of Christian nationalism. A failed baseball player with 2 previously failed marriages, stepfather was just like every other man drawn to this rhetoric, weak-willed and looking for meaning. He took it and he ran. He became more controlling, louder, angrier, and made claims of being a warrior for God. This warrior for God thing comes up a lot in this book. Being a warrior for God is being a soldier in a false war against your own mediocrity. And he was mediocre in every way. My mom's own competence drove him to humiliate her at every turn. He cheated, he lied, he beat us, yelled at us, and was inappropriate with me multiple times. And yet, she was desperate to keep the marriage alive. So she fell into all of the Christian media, the talk therapy, the pushes for being a godly woman and pleasing your husband and submitting and all of that crap. And you know what all those things say? They tell you to reward this man with more sex. More of it. Because you see, a stepfather failing as a husband, father, and a man wasn't his fault. Virile men shouldn't be punished. Because 50 years of right-wing propaganda, I lived in constant fear of a man that should have lost it all. Fearing that one day the door locks wouldn't be enough. I understand fully what the Christians say when they mean family values. And why so many of them don't care about the giant pedophile ring that their dear leader was definitely involved in. You can't condemn what you yourself are already doing. Reading this book brought it back for me. The weird phone book ripping sessions of big burly men ripping open phone books pretending that that's for God. Or the jump roping for God. Or all of the weird groups that came in and pretended that they were raising money to save our nation from, God, it was so many things all the time. But the truth is this has never been about God. Just control and violence. Trump and his ilk push the idea that might makes right because they are empty figures with nothing left for them. I agree with the Muse. The evangelical Christians are the center of sexual assault, domestic terrorism, domestic violence, and so many other problems in the US. I lived it in my home, and I see it every day on the news. I don't know how we fix this. How do we unradicalize a group that believes a divine being is pleased with state-sanctioned murder? How do we get the men to let go of the guns and reach for somebody's hand when all of their churches and their podcasts tell them that violence is holy? Whatever it is, we have got to stop centering men's comfort. Because if masculinity means all this, then masculinity is inhumane and shouldn't exist. So if you want to be as angry as I am, pick up Jesus and John Wayne. You'll be mad, but at least you'll understand what the hell is happening. I'm Makensi Grant, and I'm an author that's trying to share some truths. I hope you join along for the next one.